All right, stand by. 10 seconds to go.
Talent,
Ready, camera.
record.
3,
2,
1.
Roll to record.
Western Tuesday just isn't the day that Stephen Cruz decides to wear a Stetson. No, it's the latest presidential primaries and caucuses, and it was a split decision, but overall, very good day for the frontrunners. I'm John Phillips, and this is The Rundown. Here's how everything breaks down. Ted Cruz absolutely crushed Donald Trump in the state of Utah, getting roughly 70% of the vote and all 40 delegates. Trump didn't even come in second. He was behind John Kasich in third place. On the Democratic side, Bernie Sanders smashed Hillary in Utah with around 80% of the vote. He also won Idaho's Democratic caucus with an overwhelming 78%. Idaho, of course, already voted on the Republican side. But Arizona was the big prize of the night, and it was scooped up by both frontrunners. Donald Trump won the GOP field with 47%, and Hillary Clinton won among Democrats with 57%. Trump widened his lead overall in the delegate count, and Hillary actually won slightly fewer delegates than Bernie, but still has a healthy delegate lead. So why did Trump fail to win in Utah? Do Hillary's losses in Idaho and Utah prove that voters are still just not ready for her? And did Ted Cruz and Bernie Sanders have any chance as they continue to lose the fight for delegates? To explore these questions and much, much more, we turn to our pal Scott Ott at his home studio in Dallas, Texas. He's a political satirist and author. Joining me here in Los Angeles, stand-up comic and PJTV contributor Stephen Cruiser. Cruiser, we get deeper into the calendar, and Donald Trump continues to widen his delegate lead over Ted Cruz. As more states vote and fewer states are left on the docket, how does Ted Cruz turn the momentum around?
I don't know if he can turn it around. I don't even know if that's the objective right now. I think the objective is just to keep, the net gain, I think, for Trump last night was 18 delegates. So I think that's Cruz's whole MO right now, is to just keep
losing by a little?
Keeps Trump's delegate additions going along like Obama's economy, where it's just slightly improving. And I think that's all they're looking for right now. And I mean, it's just, I just want to say one thing about Arizona, and this is nothing that has to do with Trump or anything else, and I don't think it would have even changed the race or that much. I hate early voting. I think early voting is the devil. I think it's there just to facilitate fraud. And when you've got 22% of the vote going to people who aren't in the race anymore because they voted a month ago, I just hate early voting with a passion that knows no bounds whatsoever, and I think it's just there to muck things up.
Scott, in the state of Arizona, Trump outperformed the polls. The polls showed him winning that state, but not by the margin that he actually won by on Election Day. Do you think voters had the opportunity to punish all of the protesters for shutting down the freeway and for creating such a circus? And they said, you know what, we're not going to put up with this. We're going to go out and pull the lever for Trump, maybe even some Cruz people?
Yeah, it was kind of ironic that Donald Trump suddenly became victim of the week, but I think that may be a factor. It's always hard to read these things, and as Cruiser indicated, when you have so many people voting before the primary day, then it's really hard to know what are the key factors in this election. I mean, clearly it's a big win for Donald Trump. Picking up 58 delegates is great on his way to 1237. I think Cruiser's right that Cruz's game at this point, Ted Cruz's game, not Cruiser, is to make sure that by the time they get to the convention, nobody has 1,237 delegates unless it's Ted Cruz. Since that looks like a slim chance at this point, basically you're playing this defensive game to try to stay close, to stay into a close second position and to go into the convention as somebody who hasn't ticked off 2/3 of the country.
I don't even know if that's possible right now. I agree with both of you that is certainly the game that Ted Cruz is playing. But we've got Wisconsin voting next. I haven't seen any recent polling there, so who knows what's going to happen in that state. The state that votes after Wisconsin is New York. Trump is polling north of 60% in his home state of New York. You've got California being the last state that votes. There was a recent poll out showing Trump with a double-digit lead in California. I'm on the radio for 3 hours every day. I write a newspaper column in the largest conservative newspaper in Southern California. And I hear from these people all the time. Trump is going to do just fine in California. I don't see, when you look at the numbers, when you look at the math, how Cruz at this point stops Trump from reaching that magic number.
The breakdown at the moment, I don't think it's impossible. I think that there would have to be a slight momentum. I mean, I said that earlier, but there would have to be a slight momentum shift for Cruz. I mean, the only thing weighing in his favor is that a lot of these are closed primaries, and he tends to do better in those. I don't think it's impossible. I'm not one of these going like, oh yeah, we're definitely headed for a broker convention but I still think that's a plausibility. I still think it's on the table. I think the Cruz campaign is going to have to step up and do a couple things. But I will say this about Arizona: you're trying to figure out the factors there. I'll defend my home state on this. For people like you, who are single-issue voters on illegal immigration, which I've been perilously close to being in the past, there isn't a voting populace in America that's greater affected by that issue than Arizona. I live in California. I've been here for 20 years. I know that Californians and Texans and people in New Mexico think they're affected by it. Arizona bears the disproportionate amount of the negative costs of illegal immigration. So this was a no-brainer that Trump was going to do well there, because if ever an electorate was going to be energized on that issue alone, this was going to be the place.
And just when you look at population patterns, the California of 1994 that voted for Pete Wilson for a second term as governor and voted for Proposition 187 is not the California of today. A lot of the people that were here back in the 1990s fled the state because of a horrific state government, because of high taxes, because their businesses were being regulated to death, and they moved to states like Arizona. It's not a mistake. It's not just a random occurrence that Jan Brewer was elected governor and Joe Arpaio was elected sheriff of Maricopa County. A lot of people who think like me, who are former Californians, are now living and voting in Arizona.
Well, yeah, a lot of people. I mean, Arizona is always happy to welcome every economic outflux from California. We've been doing that for 50 years. But yes, so it's a lot of disgruntled people who are mad about immigration there. You know, that's a very succinct assessment there, except for the Jan Brewer thing. Jan Brewer was horrible on immigration. She came around on SB 1070. She opposed it. She was in the middle of a pack of Republicans when she was the incumbent running for re-election, and SB 1070 saved her career. That's when she became the super anti-illegal immigration. She was horrible on it until that point.
Well, as long as you find Jesus before you roll a 7, you're okay.
In April of 2010, when she was running for re-election, she was mid-pack and opposed to SB 1070. So, but it did save her on that, and yes, she is a hardcore on that now. But you're right, the California demographic shift is the thing, because that's mostly where the business people, the people who spend money on elections, and the people who vote go.
Scott, talk to me about the Democratic side of the aisle. Hillary got trounced in Idaho. She got trounced in Utah. I think collectively white people are saying to her, we're just not that into you. Why is it that she's got a problem with white people?
You know, I don't know if it's a problem with white people so much as it is that that the African-American Democratic bloc sticks together. And it always does. I mean, they won't break for anybody. But the young are clearly going to Bernie Sanders, and the rest of the Democratic Party is looking at Hillary Clinton and saying, really? This is the best we can do for the first woman president? I think there are a lot of Democrats who desperately want to vote for the first female president of the United States. I think there are a lot of Republicans who would be glad to see that day as well. But they can't believe that it's this person that even people in her own party don't like or trust. And I think it's interesting. The superdelegates are going to be everything here, because despite the fact that Hillary picks up big states like Arizona, Bernie's still not all that far behind if you look at the regular delegates, and he's making the case that he's going to do better as time goes on, and he's going to try to persuade the superdelegates that ultimately Hillary Clinton would be a bad choice. And somehow Bernie thinks that he's going to, at the convention, be able to get those superdelegates to swing his way, at least some of them.
You called it, though. For like almost a year, you've been saying Hillary's got a white voter problem. You've been saying that all along, so props to John for that. He's been saying she's got this looming white voter problem, and you're right.
How embarrassing is it for her to not only lose, but lose that badly, as everyone is pretty much tacitly acknowledged that she's going to be the nominee, and then they still have these elections, and she goes out and just gets pummeled by Bernie?
There's a reason she looks angry every time she speaks now. I mean, she just used to look scary sometimes, but there's this, we've mentioned it before here too. Even in the victory speeches, there's this grating in her voice, and she's just annoyed to have to be going through the process. She's very irritated by the whole. There's this imperiousness that is so off-putting to so many voters because she doesn't want to have to do any of this. And maybe she knows something about the Justice Department and what Joe Biden's plans are now too. But I think she's so angry to even have to get up there and make a little speech every now and then. She just wants to be eating bonbons in a cabana by herself somewhere with her servants around her.
What is it that's the number one reason why these voters aren't getting behind her now that she's a presumptive nominee? Is it because they think she's untrustworthy? Is it because they think that she's not left-wing enough? Is it because, I don't know, maybe they just want a guy instead of a girl? What's the reason that these voters aren't voting for her, Scott?
She's not really given anybody a reason to overcome her negatives. I mean, her negatives of dishonesty is huge. Being likable is a big dang deal. And Bernie Sanders has managed to pull off this crazy Uncle Joe routine that makes him at the same time weird and likable. And so, you know, even I like Bernie Sanders. I love watching the guy talk. But Bernie is on a crusade. Bernie has a purpose. He has meaning in his life that goes beyond some demographic slice. He's not saying vote for me because I'm an old, you know, somewhat secular Jewish guy. He's saying this: we've got to break up the big banks, and we've got to make the millionaires and billionaires pay their share, and we've got to give everybody free college education. So we know what Bernie's about. But for the most part, Hillary Clinton's case is, I'm a good manager. I've worked in the office before. I know how things work. If you vote for me, I'll make things work. Bernie is being unreasonable. Well, Hillary Clinton just doesn't understand the base of her own party. Their fundamental drive is being unreasonable about the potential of government.
Scott Ott gets the last word. That's all the time we have for today, but now it's your turn. If you voted on Tuesday, let us know who you support and why in the comment section below. I'm John Phillips. Thanks so much for watching.